Hello and welcome to Facebook Live. If you have questions during this, I'm going to answer those questions later, so leave them in the comments and then I'll answer those later. I find it kind of difficult to do both. Trying to multitask while I'm doing these recordings is super difficult, so please leave your questions and I'll try to get to those. Even if you're listening to this later, that's totally fine. I have no problem with that. Tonight I want to talk to you about kids and sugar and food, and I want to share with you some things that I found research-wise, but I also want to make a disclaimer that I am not a nutritionist and I'm not that kind of doctor, but I have had a lot of experience being in the homes, and I tend to see patterns and watch for things like that. And it's really come to my attention in the last few months as we've been dealing with really aggressive and highly agitated kids. Most of the kids that we're working with right now have oppositional defiance or dysregulated mood disorder. And I think that what I really see in it more than that is just this highly agitated, highly anxious kids, extremely prone to aggression and violence, and just kids that are really on the edge. And if you've been around our teachings, how we train you parents at Healthy Foundations, we talk about this mountain of escalation, and these kids just are living kind of at the top of that mountain all the time. And it's very difficult to get them to come down to a calmer level. So making choices is not working for these kids, but parents needing to really be clear and direct is. And so one of the things that I've really noticed is that there's this correlation between how these kids eat, the kind of food they eat, and what they do as they're escalating, kind of part of their pattern, and then how I believe that's affecting them. And I do have a little bit of research to share with you on that. And I think that the only thing more sensitive to talk to people about, other than parenting, is to talk to you about food and how your kids are eating, and food issues with kids, and what your family eats, and the kind of food that you have in your house. So I know that I could step on some toes here. I hope that it doesn't offend you, but that you'll consider what's being said and really think about if there's some changes that could be made for your kids, for your family, that may help with this. So I'm just telling you what I'm seeing and what I've read, and I'm open to discussion about that. And having said that, I want you to also know that I do realize that many families I work in, there are pretty extreme food issues with the kids. It used to be it was more about kids that were hoarding food. Now it's more like just trying to get them to eat. And I think some of this is really true with kids with autism. If you look at the foods that your kids eat, what I always notice is that they're all kind of in the same food texture color group. A lot of tan colored foods. And just think about that for a minute, what your kids eat. Not a lot of bright green, not a lot of vegetables, even fruit, maybe a little bit tricky, maybe apples and pears, but do they eat like berries, some things like that. Just think about that and think about what their plates look like. I sit at a lot of meals with families. I see that most families are preparing a pretty good variety and palette of different foods, colors, groups. But what the kids actually eat may be some bread, some crackers, maybe some peanut butter. Some kids are really into peanut butter, some kids not, maybe some bananas, sugar for sure. Most kids want the cake and the cookies and the crackers. And then a lot of the hoarding stuff that I see is kids that have candy hidden places, whether they get it at home or school or whenever they have money. That's what they spend their money on. Soda, not even that it's served at meals, but the kids might have access to that. They're drinking that. Fruit drinks, be really careful about that. And even like Gatorade, stuff like that. So, you know, it doesn't matter what your kids eat. I mean, maybe you're just happy that they're eating something, right? Because I know some kids, like, it's excruciating to get them to sit down and to eat. And it's one of the things that we schedule, you know, in the program is meal times and snacks. So, but just think about, you know, do your kids really crave sweet stuff? If they've had trauma, that trauma lights up the addictive part of the brain. And I think that when you realize that sugar is, I've heard different things, 4 times, 9 times more addictive than cocaine. It's even something that's twice as addictive to cocaine, and we know it's more than that, is pretty intense. So sugar addiction is a real thing, and it's a problem in our country. And it's in a lot of the foods that our kids eat. And also, I look at foods that turn into sugar. So these kids are hungry often because they're eating food that breaks down into sugar, starch type things in their body. And so it runs through their body pretty quickly. It's not sustaining them. And so that's another reason why we have a lot of access to food, right? Are they hoarding? Are they stealing food? And then the thing that's come to my attention is that these kids are really aggressive about food, just extremely aggressive about especially about the snack times, and especially if the snack is left open. A lot of agitation if kids are asked, do you want this snack or that snack? Or what do you want for a snack? And I just see kids escalate all the time around snack time. It should be fun and happy, and you get a chance to eat something. So, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about the structure of food, you know, why we structure that. But I've just noticed that these kids, when they're agitated, and I've seen it probably, I mean, right now I have a lot of boys on my caseload, but they'll get agitated about things and they will go into the kitchen or into the pantry, open the refrigerator, or they'll grab something and they'll eat something, and it's usually almost always like sugar. And so I don't know, you know, what that drive is. And a lot of times it's happening while I'm sitting there, and the parent may not even be aware, you know, that they just ate a bag of, you know, mini Oreos, or, you know, took something out of their backpack, or, you know, some things like that. So you may feel like you have things structured, but watch when your kids are agitated what they're going to, because this is where I'm really seeing the correlation. And I looked up a lot of stuff about aggression and kids being aggressive and related to food and all of that. And I'm honestly quite concerned. And then I find that, so as like, I've had kids that are like really agitated. They want soda. They want something sweet. They're demanding that, or yelling that that's what they want, and sometimes just taking it. And then as they're eating it, it's like almost like they're kind of euphoric about it, right? Like they're kind of happy, but then we almost always, like, that buildup that was happening before will happen after. And it's very hard for me to see if it's the sugar necessarily that's causing it, because they were definitely agitated before when they grabbed it. But I just think that the sugar kind of gives, like, maybe not quite a pause, because it doesn't bring them down to a regulation, but it makes their brain maybe feel a little bit better for a minute, and then we're back at it. And then afterwards, I've seen kids want something really sweet. They'll want a snack, or they'll want something. So I want you to really just think about that, because I've had this opportunity to notice it not just in one home, but probably in the last 6 months, just consistently. And when I look back and all of the families and the homes that we've been in, I see this correlation between the food and the agitation. And I know that food can be soothing. and especially like comfort food, right? Like that's why we call it comfort food. But these kids aren't going for comfort and soothing food. They're going to things that give them that immediate like adrenaline rush kind of stuff. So I think that that's really interesting. And I don't know, you know, a lot of kids with ADHD, which are most of the kids that I work with have that diagnosis. You know, caffeine can have the opposite effect, but we know from science, and we've known for a long time, that processed food and sugar with kids with ADHD, it does have an effect. So I have parents that when I try to bring this up, they tell me like, well, that's not true. Like I've never seen anything, you know, they don't even eat that much sugar, or they don't even like that much sugar, but look at the food that they're eating. Like just because it's not a candy bar doesn't mean it's not sugar. As a parent was telling me this, their child was eating white bread with cinnamon sugar on it, right? And so they're telling me that their kid doesn't eat that much sugar. And this is the kind of thing I see them eat even at meals. Like they'll eat a little bit of whatever their meal is, and then they immediately eat all of the bread or the crackers that, you know, and I'm not talking about like, you know, healthy crackers. I'm just talking about anything that kind of gives them that starchy kind of breaks down into sugar into your metabolism. So some researchers say that sugar, well, it's not the cause of the behaviors, that they confirm that it is a contributor to behaviors, that there is a link. This thing that I'm noticing, this anecdotal research that I'm doing is actually backed up by a lot of science. And there's clear information that excessive sugar intake contributes to ADHD, to bipolar, and behavioral issues that are noted in oppositional defiance and conduct disorders. So the science is saying, yes, there is a link here. So I just started looking for information because of the aggressive behaviors that I've seen and the intake of sugar in the homes that I work with. And another article linked high fructose corn syrup and uric acid in increasing risk due to the fructose reacting in the body. So it actually causes low energy in the cells, and then that triggers a foraging response. So like these kids are like super hungry, right? And then they eat a few bites and then they don't want any more, or they eat it really, really fast and then they want more, right? Like it's like I've seen kids eat a lot really fast, but they don't giving it time to like settle in their body. And this article talked about how if this low energy like is in your cells, which also happens from being dehydrated too and not drinking enough water and triggering that foraging response, then it actually creates more risk-taking and impulsive behavior, novelty seeking, rapid decision-making, and aggressiveness. So I've been actually asking parents to like slow down a little bit their eating process, like have a snack time that's going to last at least 15 minutes, and it's snack and chat, and we're gonna talk, but we're gonna like practice like not just shoving food in our mouths and then asking for something else. So just, you know, part of monitoring that and just seeing if we can kind of slow that down a little bit. The fructose that's found in refined sugars not only impacts the Western diet with increased problems of obesity, but contributes greatly to behavioral disorders, is what these articles are saying. I don't know if you're aware, but some of the newest research that's coming out is saying that dementia is also now being called diabetes type 3. A huge link to what we're eating in our culture and this disorder that really affects our mental capabilities. We know that blood sugar fluctuating can contribute to mood swings. So if these kids are getting something that's high in sugar or turning to sugar in their body, high starch things, and then they're metabolizing it very quickly, then their blood sugar is going to drop. And so that could be part of the foraging and wanting that next thing. But when you consider that foraging and how it sparks that impulsivity inside of our brains, that, you know, just grabbing things and that just impulsive and rapid decision-making. And I see that in the way that these kids are aggressive. Like it is like so fast. It's not like a mood disorder where you have different moods for a period of time. This is intermittent and explosive disorder. If it's any kind of disorder, but if food could make a difference, like we are so willing, I feel like, as parents, to try all these different medications and, all of these things. But if food could make a difference, like, I just want to encourage you to consider trying that. If someone in your family is sick, if there's gluten problems, if there's, cancer, so you're changing your diet, like, please, as a family, do this. Don't just put your kid that's angry and aggressive, like, on this special diet where he can't have these things because it makes him crazy, right? Like, he will be more crazy. It's like putting a crack addict in a crack house and saying, everyone else can have this but you, so consider changing this for your whole family. And you may have to do it slow, although I will caution you that that with an addiction like sugar creates, a little bit is going to maybe cause more irritability than just cutting it out and dealing with that in your home. Obviously, with your kids, the older they get, the less ability you're going to have to control what they eat outside of your home. But if you're doing this program, you're having a lot of contact with your kids, and you're dealing with your kids, all of the time at home, and you're keeping them close. And so just making that change in your home could be huge. And I think, it's worth a try. Another study that I read suggested that consuming foods that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids is likely to reduce aggression and works really quickly with kids. So this is especially helpful for kids who are impulsive and have these outbursts. It helps with antisocial behaviors as well. And that changes were noticeable within 3 months. So when you think about what these doctors are telling you about medication, when you change medication, it's going to be, 6 weeks minimum change over to a new medication, and maybe another, 3 to 6 weeks more, just trying to see if that's working. And then if it's not working, and I'm not saying to go off medication. I think that sometimes the medication is the only thing holding our kids together and our families together right now. But I just think that if we don't look at diet, if we don't look at the foods that these kids are eating, and if we don't tie it in to their behaviors, we're making a really big mistake. So while changing your kids' diet may seem really impossible and difficult, changes that the whole family can make is just huge. And what if it limits, the need for multiple medications and multiple therapies, and even calls to the police or the hospital? And if your kids start to feel better, this is the thing. It's like, I personally went off of sugar 3 years ago, and it was amazing to me as an older adult how that impacted me and how I felt. Once I was off of it, I didn't want to go back because it really is an addiction. And I didn't want to go through everything I went through getting off of it. And also, you stop craving it. Like, I really honestly don't crave those things. So, do I want them sometimes when I see other people having them, when I'm around it? Of course. But that's part of why I create my environment, to not have that around all the time. But I think with our kids, when we see this tie to behavior so strongly linked to the foods they eat, and when I see it across the board, that it's not just a kid over here had this problem, right? It's in almost every home that I see, that this same kind of behavior. And so I just think that this is a really important topic and something to really think about. So here's some other ideas that will also help related to food, that don't necessarily have to do exactly with the kind of food that your kids are eating. With that, I want you to just please have meet that opposition to what I'm saying with curiosity, and notice with your kids. Make a chart if you have to, watch it, see what they're doing. But I will tell you that a lot of times the sugar that the kids are consuming are not in your presence. I have kids that go up to their bedroom and they have candy up there, they have soda up there. Almost every bathroom of kids that are aggressive and angry, when I look in the bathroom, I drink a lot of water, so I end up using everybody's bathroom. But every single waste paper basket has candy wrappers and junk food stuff in it. Are these kids going in your bathroom and eating this stuff? Like, or are you? I don't know, you know? So it's just an odd place, I think, to find all of that. So just be aware that you may not know exactly how much they're consuming of that, what they're trading their lunch for, what they're, you know, they spend their money on this kind of junk food, like really like an addict, right? Like they collect their pennies and it's pretty crazy if you really start looking at it. But really envelop it as a family if you're gonna tackle it. I found that families that this is what they have for snacks, and it's not left up to choices, and it's not that they have this stuff around and then they're trying to make the kids eat healthy, but this becomes part of your routine, that it goes a lot better and it creates less tension on the kid. That, I mean, I've worked in families where one kid has a gluten, you know, isn't supposed to have gluten, or they, you know, are trying to deal with the aggression. And yes, he is the aggressive kid. And so, you know, he, you know, is not allowed to have, everybody's having candy and he can't have it. Everybody's, you know, eating this thing and he can't have it. I just feel like that's too much. Like I did that as an adult. I changed the way I ate when everyone around me was still eating the other way, but that was my choice as an adult for my own health reasons. And these kids, it's very difficult for them to understand that you're doing something to help them for later or for, you know, even the next day. So, because remember, with your kids, there's now and not now, and that's it. So, you know, please consider making those changes as a family, you know, changing the way the snacks are and seeing if you can level it out. But here's some other things. One is that it's recommended that you eat consistently. That's that you put meals and snacks on a schedule, and you don't just wing it. Put your, you know, your kids don't, this is the thing, your kids don't really know how they feel about stuff. They don't have a good sense, they have sensory issues, right? I have been around kids that don't really know, they know if something's uncomfortable, but they don't really know, like, if their shoes fit right, or if it's their socks, or, you know, what it is. It just, they're uncomfortable kind of in their own skin. So they may not be aware when they're really hungry, when they're actually thirsty, or when they're actually tired. So these things have to be scheduled for them. It's the scaffolding that, you know, is creating this structure to be the way that it needs to be. So they may not know when they're truly hungry or truly full. We've been having kids pause after they eat, talk a little bit, and then if they're still hungry, they can have something else. You don't need to ask, you know, just tell them. It's, you know, if they ask or saying, you know, I'm hungry, or you know, they're usually not saying I'm hungry. They're usually saying, I want, can I have this? They're grabbing things, they're bringing it to you. Maybe they're stuffing it in their pockets. I don't know. But it's okay too if they don't want a snack. You're not going to force them to have a snack, and we're not going to force them to eat. And I really don't think it's helpful to carry things over. If they don't eat it at breakfast, now they're going to eat it for lunch. I've been in families where if they don't eat it for lunch, then they eat it for dinner, and then they also have to still eat the dinner. We're not trying to create food issues here. Food is very social. We want our kids to enjoy sitting at the table and eating with us, even if that's not the case yet. So you're going to decide what's healthy. You're going to put the choices on the table. I always encourage families to have like a stable that if the kids don't really like what's served for dinner, they can make like a peanut butter sandwich. Nothing else, but that's on the table as well. Try to eliminate those food battles. And if they don't eat their snack, then just remind them once. That's fine. You don't have to eat it. In 2 hours, we'll be having dinner. So in an hour, when they're hungry, you can remind them, like, I know you're hungry. I'm going to have you have some water, and dinner will be in an hour. If you get your body on a routine, it starts to cooperate with you. When we are always kind of off on the routine and schedule, I see more problems. So, you know, eat consistently, put those things. I have some families that do more of a healthy snack later, and maybe a sweet snack in the morning. It gives them time to kind of burn it off. But with your aggressive kids, I want to really warn you about sugary foods, foods with red dye, processed foods, be really careful. Even processed healthy foods can cause some problems. Just because something is in the health food store and it's processed doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy, okay? So just really watch that. Try to eat real foods, you know, real fruit, real, you know, cheese would probably be one thing, although there is some warning about dairy, that some of the most common allergies among children is dairy, and that children with ADHD, it's common for many of them to act out if they, after consuming milk, cheese, yogurt, or high dairy products. And I think I would really look at some of that, because I think some of that has to do with sugar and dyes that are in like the yogurts that we give kids, the yogurts that we all like to. I do see kids though that will grab milk quite often instead of water. I would encourage you to increase your child's water intake. Water bottles that have a sippy lid or straw are really, really important in creating, or I should say in decreasing anxiety. So, you know, try to keep that in mind. They should have a water bottle with them. They should be drinking that water all day long, and they can use that to help with anxiety. So some people with allergies actually will get physically bloated, congested, or tired. But in kids with allergies, they become irritable, depressed, or anxious, and they struggle to concentrate. So really watch that. The problem too, like I feel like peanut butter is one of the best go-to protein things that we can give our kids, but it really does have a lot of sugar in it. I have my, I use like a nut butter, like sunflower butter, or just like a nut butter without sugar, almond butter without sugar, and then I add monk fruit in that to make it so it's not, you know, just so dry. So you can try that. Some people have talked about honey instead of sugar. You might want to do a little bit of research on that. A lot of honey that we get nowadays is kind of processed in its own way too. I stay away from all kinds of sugar like that, although I do use monk fruit as a good substitute. And it's nice because you kind of want to limit it. It tastes good in a smaller quantity than if you use too much, so you can kind of make your own. You know what, I want you to watch out on wheat products. We have gluten has become a buzzword in our society, but I would caution you that if your child is eating a lot of tan-colored foods, they are probably eating wheat that's been processed in a different way than how wheat was meant to be processed. And there's documentaries on wheat, and it's not about the gluten so much to me that I'm cautioning you about, although there's plenty of research about this irritability in the bowels and how that ties in with kids with autism and other disorders, and how these turn into sugar quickly, and how irritability and aggression are also tied in to that. I'm not trying to take away all of your quick choices and make life more difficult for you. So please know that. I just, you know, if you only pick one thing that you're going to really concentrate on, I would pick the sugar. Really think about the sugar and the irritability, because the research was just so tied into processed foods and refined sugar. Food with dyes, cereal, juice, and candy, all linked to reaction in kids for ages. Synthetic food dyes are actually banned in other countries, but most processed food in the United States still includes them. This is what I have against processed food. So foods to eat more of. Let's talk about that. The good news is that there's many foods that actually improve behaviors. So, for example, the best foods for people with ADHD and mood disorders are meat, nuts, and beans for protein. Fresh fruit and veggies, omega-3 fatty acids like those found in salmon, tuna, walnuts, olive oil can make a noticeable difference in children. Wow, I mean, just think about that. I have a kid that is really highly irritated, and one of the things he really likes is he likes crackers with tuna. And I feel like, great, like, let's do that, you know? And I think there's a big difference on the snacks when he eats that versus when he has a snack. He likes to, when his let's see, how should I say this? His less healthy parent is there. He will ask for fruit with chocolate on it, and drizzled with chocolate, except for him, it's like drizzled with chocolate. Big difference in the irritability. So again, let me repeat those so you get them. People with ADHD and mood disorders, best foods that improve behaviors are meat, nuts, and beans for protein, fresh fruit, veggies, omega-3 fatty acids found in salmon, tuna, walnuts, and olive oil can make a noticeable difference in the children. Overall, I just want to encourage you to take care of yourself. Somebody has to be in charge of the well-being for the family. And as a parent, that's you. So you set up your doctor's appointments for your kids, the dentist, you pay the bills, it's your house, it's your refrigerator. You're gonna have to set up the overall lifestyle for your kids. Even if they go away from that in making their own choices, I want them to know that there's this solid, healthy foundation in their everyday structure. Real food, water, and sleep are a part of your everyday structure. So remember that we're trying to find balance, and we're trying to not have these extreme moods, right? So if we can use something that will help level our kids out, whether it's, you know, I believe, yes, medication can do that, but we're finding that it doesn't, unless you want your kids to be zombies, the medication isn't making it worth it. And when the medication is wearing off is at home when they're with you. So, you know, finding that balance with the food, amid the extreme moods and impulsiveness and crazy behaviors. Listen, you pay now or you pay later. And I just think you guys are paying a huge price for what's happening with your kids. So teaching these good habits, you're making these life changes in how you're parenting. And so I just want to encourage you to have a plan, to know that you can't manage all of their emotions, but being safe and having a safe home is a must for you and your family. And so if you have things that you don't want your kids to get into, if you don't want them to get up in the middle of the night and eat this stuff, you're going to have to lock it up. And it's going to have to be put away, because remember, this addiction is anywhere from 4 to 9 times greater than cocaine. And if you have it in your house, these kids are going to find it. And if you really feel like you can't give up these things yourself, I have seen kids eat the weirdest things, spoonfuls of sugar, when they don't have access to the food that has it. So lots of families I work with have locks on their pantries, or have things locked up in the master bedroom. I know it's terrible to have to live like that, but you are living with addicts. And a lot of that is because that's the part of their brain that's lit up, and the trauma that's happening, that they're even creating for themselves and for you guys and your family, is real, and it needs to be dealt with. So our goal is to help our kids to regulate and to give them the best tools for that. And right now you're in charge of their regulation because they can't do it for themselves. So that is my passionate cry to you about foods and kids, and the best thing that I think that you can do. So let's not keep diminishing it. We're making these life changes in your home and your parenting out of pure necessity, right? Because you cannot continue to live with kids that are so aggressive and so violent that they're breaking things and hurting people. And if you want to keep them in your home, which is, you know, they are going to be in your family regardless, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do about this as a whole. So best wishes. Again, leave your comments and your questions in the comments section, or you can private message me. I'd be happy to talk to you more about this and any other parenting concerns that you have. Thank you.